I just wanted to just kind of set the scene here. Greta Thunberg is a name that everybody knows, but there are plenty of other activists out there who have been talking about climate change, and they're getting much less attention. Greta has really raised the bar, and it's incredible that she's been so powerful, such a powerful voice. You have on this photograph, you have Amira Ode Quinones from Puerto Rico. You have Quanah Chasing Horse from Alaska. She's 17. You have Vic Barrett from New York, and then the other guy is, he's kind of my cousin, my nephew, sorry, my partner's nephew. That's Iran, and he is from Sri Lanka. So there's a lot of great voices out there who are speaking out, so it's not just Greta. But as I said, she's really raised the bar here. And I think tonight what we want to do is really introduce our panelists, who are three great voices on this issue. First of all, I'd like to introduce Nanticha Lynn Ocharoenchai. Did I get that right? Nanticha, sorry. I didn't have my glasses on when I said that. Sorry. Nanticha Lynn Ocharoenchai. She's a recent graduate who led the Bangkok March. She went all the way to the Ministry of Environment on the 20th September. And then we have 12-year-old Lily, who was also at the climate strike protest, and she really won praise for her one-person campaign against plastic waste in Thailand. So they've been great voices on this issue. Then we have Stefanos Fotiou. Did I get that right? Okay. Director of the Environment and Development Division at ESCAP. So he's going to discuss the issues surrounding the importance of young activists for the environment. So we're going to start with a short movie, and I'll let that play, and then we'll get to the panel.
What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! We live on the same planet Earth. We take resources from it. We take too much from Mother Earth. It's time we give back. It's time we say thank you. It's time we act on climate change. What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now!
Was footage courtesy of Jonathan Head from BBC. So let's get right to it. So I'm going to start by basically asking each of you some basic questions. I wanted to hear, Lily, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah.
What kind of, how did you get started in this, and what is driving you?
I started when I was 8 years old, and when I went on a beach in Pattaya where there's trash everywhere. And I thought, and I knew that all the trash would go into the ocean, and I knew that it would eventually hurt animals. So I was really sad about that, but we can't just sit here and be sad. We have to do something about it. So I chose to do something about it.
And what did you do?
I went to talk to many different Thai companies like Central, the Mall, Tesco, Big C, and more. And now they've stopped using plastic once or twice a month in those stores. And I've also been talking to the government and the Ministry of Natural Resources. And by next year, 43 major retailers have banned plastics.
Wow. What was the reaction when you first started talking to the government?
When I first started talking to the government, I didn't email them or send them letters because they never replied. So I literally just skipped school and went to their office and just sat there and waited for someone to talk to me. And that was useful because I got to explain to people what was happening, but they were mostly confused and they didn't seem to care much. But when time passed, they've come to realize that it is a really big issue and we should be doing something about it.
Wow. And what was the reaction from the businesses that you've spoken to?
I usually called in for for meetings, so I call in the service hotline, and they would ask me like, "Oh, is this a homework project?" Or like, "Is your mom there?" and things like that. But eventually, we bugged them enough for them to let us meet with them.
Wow. How did you feel when that decision came down?
Honestly, I was really nervous because I didn't know what to say or what to do, and I didn't know if I should be doing this. But when I talked to them more and when I started meeting with them a lot, it felt like I had to do it, and it felt like my responsibility and my job.
So, Lynn, I wanted to ask you similar questions. How did you get started in the environmental arena?
So I first started, I wanted to do journalism. I wanted to write news, not be on it. But I started writing blogs for Greenpeace like some 3-4 years ago. Wanted to get into journalism, but I always ended up writing about the environment. And yeah, learned more about it, and then learned more about climate change, got really frustrated about it, got depressed about it. And eventually this year in March, yeah, it was just out of anger. On Monday, I read this article about Greta, and I figured like, hey, what can I lose? I could just create a Facebook event. It's that easy. So I did, and yeah, I figured, no one cares. Why am I the only one who's scared, or why am I the only one who really cares about this environmental issue? So yeah, I created that Facebook event, and turns out I was wrong. A lot of people care. And from Monday to Friday was the strike. 400 or 500 people were interested in this Facebook event, and yeah, that was the start of the climate strike Thailand.
Wow.
Thank you.
And you clearly chose the right forum on Facebook. Tell me a little bit about why Facebook is so important.
So I guess Thailand is probably it's probably the first or second biggest country using Facebook, on Facebook. And yeah, Thais love trends. Thais love quick viral things, and not just Thais. The whole world is on Facebook. So that's the easiest platform to spread this kind of event or this kind of news right now. And I mean, initially it was more of just how simple it was to use to, invite people to an event.
Yeah. Excuse me. So, what was driving you? What kind of was at the heart of what drove you to do this?
I think initially with the climate strikes, it was anger. It was just frustration of why is it only me who has to take care of the environment. But then afterwards, when I started doing it, first strike on, I saw how many people showed up, how much support there was for it, and then that kind of anger and frustration came more to be like, wow, that was all it took. That was just 1 or 2 people who stood up for something, and then it's not that people don't care. It's that people just maybe need someone to start it, and then they will follow. So yeah, seeing that kind of support, that kind of community really kept me going. A lot of days I want to give up because it's frustrating, you know, and it feels hopeless, but there's so many people working into this. There's just no reason to stop.
And maybe both of you can let me know what was the reaction from your friends, and also generally the reaction on Facebook that you saw. I mean, obviously this took off, it snowballed. There's been a lot from both of you. You've both, you know, really engaged on Facebook. What are you seeing on Facebook, and what's the reaction been like from both friends and also strangers?
None of my friends showed up to any event. I have hosted 3 strikes so far. First strike, none of my friends showed up. Second strike, 2 of my friends showed up because I forced them to come. Third strike, no one showed up. But you know, that's the crazy part. Hundreds of strangers would show up for this, so that's really amazing. With public opinion on Facebook, it's a lot of support. As I said, you know, people just needed something to begin for them to come together and share this platform. I think that's the main perception from what I get of the Climate Strike Thailand Facebook page. But I feel like that's just what I see from, you know, preaching to the choir. Anyone who likes that page and comments on that page is someone supporting that page. I've read comments outside once, and it was something like, what are you protesting for? By the end of the day, you're just gonna go home and, you know, turn on the AC and live normally again. And I was like, he's right. I mean, that's true. But you know, that's not the whole point of these strikes. These strikes are, it's creating awareness and action to follow. It's got a bigger purpose than changing an individual lifestyle. So yeah, brush that off, made it better.
Yeah. Lily?
My friends are really supportive of what I do, and they show up to lots of lots of the strikes. But for certain events, it's not a matter of me convincing them. It's more like me convincing their parents to come, because most of their parents don't allow them. But for strangers, most strangers like congratulate me on what they're doing, what I'm doing, but they don't see that Thailand can actually change. I remember me and my mom went to this restaurant once. We always go to that restaurant, and we asked them to change to plastic, and they're really defensive, and they told us like, oh, even if we change, Thailand's not ever going to change. You have no hope for the future. We have no hope for the future, and things like that. And I thought to myself like, oh, what if it is true? But I feed on that negative and sad emotions and turn it into something positive by me and Lynn going to different strikes and talking to different people. So yeah.
Wow. So that actually leads into what is it that you want from your activism? What is it that you would like to see happen? You've already made quite a bit happen. What would you like to see happen next?
You go first.
What's that?
I would like to see change, not only change in different companies and government. I also want to see change in people's mindsets and behavior, because I feel like most Thai people's mindset right now is that once you throw away something, it magically disappears, but it doesn't. We want to create that mindset to be more like trying to not be wasteful, trying to see where things are going to go, and having a change of mindset, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Same as Lily. I want to see change. I started all of this because all I wanted was, you know, just a nice park to hang out, live normally, breathe good air. It's really that simple. Yeah, I think that was it's really that simple.
Yeah. What do you think about the particular issue of Thailand and Thailand's vulnerability to climate change, and it's the fact that there are impacts that are being felt here already, and there will probably be future impacts that may be harder than, much tougher than in other parts of the world. Is that something that drives you as well?
I believe climate change affects the whole world, no matter where we are. And Thailand's having a lot of trouble with the weather change, and so we can't grow crops. And the really heavy, unusual rainfall that we're having, causing to floods, and PM 2.5, which is causing more global warming, which will create more droughts, and it's just a really bad downward spiral. But we're trying to fix that and trying to make change.
Great.
So just adding on to Lily's point, Bangkok, I keep saying, by 10 years will be underwater, and I don't know, that might just come from research, but I don't think that's very far at all from possible. It's incredible we're seeing extreme droughts and floods at the same time, and news media is reporting on this every day, but it is just bad weather. There's no link to climate change, and the saddest part is the most vulnerable communities and the hardest hit communities are communities that cannot fend for themselves. Yeah, Thailand's a coastal city. Bangkok's the 7th most vulnerable city to climate impacts, and unfortunately, we don't really have a government who cares too much about that. Or I hope they do. They're just taking their time.
Great. So we'll give you ladies a break, and also we want to get to Stefanos, but I think first we want to show a quick clip about Greta Thunberg, and then we'll continue the discussion.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. You are failing us. But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you.
Wow, powerful. What's your reaction to that? All three. I'd like to hear from all three of you on your reaction to Greta's words and the emotions.
You want to start?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I very much relate with the thing that say that she shouldn't have been there, and she should have actually studied back in school. And the fact that you have such a big crisis taking children out of school, for me, it's an indicator of how bad we are. Because, you know, universal education and educated people is what everybody's advocating. And we know that change will come because of education. So when you have such a crisis like the climate crisis taking children out of school, I think we have reached a kind of limit. So I'm very much alarmed by this. And I would say that this generation, Greta, Lilly, Lynn, they have every right to be angry and complain because they didn't contribute it so far to the problem. At the same time, I think that because this generation is so angry and because it's the young people now that they are talking about climate crisis, we might be hopeful. I remember that in my generation, we were talking a lot about politics. And what happened is that politics became a big thing. And then, of course, they failed. Then there was another generation. I think at one point in Europe and in the West, we called them the yuppies, that they were talking only about money and how you could become a successful business. And then you had all this emergence of successful businesses. So if the young generation today talks about the climate crisis, probably we have a good future that when they will become the decision makers, when you become prime ministers, CEOs of multinational companies, civil servants, you will probably take the right decisions that have not been taken so far. So that's my reaction to this, I think.
Okay.
I totally agree with Greta, and I agree with you as well. Change does come from education, and I believe that my mom's generation was all about building up to the future, like making high-tech things and things like that, yeah. And I think my generation is all about strengthening our foundations, which is the earth, and we really need to fix that now. And when in the last few years that I've been talking to major companies, one of the major things I found out is why they can't change is because of the money, because everything that we have in companies is related to money, but money cannot buy the world back in the end. So we have to change our behavior and change these things.
Hello? Regarding the speech, I watched that and I really feel for her. These are the emotions I wake up with a lot of mornings of thinking about 30 years from now and calculating my age, and the 20 plus 30 equals 50, and that will be the time I die. You know, it sounds very concrete, but that is the kind of feeling I go through. Definitely climate change has ruined with mental health, and it's hard to work in climate activism because it's so hard to communicate that fact because it's so simple of literally if we don't do anything we will die, and it's that simple, and there's no other way of putting it. I don't know. It's and especially as someone who works in the environment, you look at everything around you. You know, you look at the lights, the electricity, cars, shopping malls, and you see the origins of everything and where it goes from then, and it's a horrible feeling. And you know, with activism, it's a lot of creating hope for people, and it's hard when you don't have any yourself. But I think most days it's just moving on from then is basically like there's no other choice. You know, I don't have any hope for the future sometimes, a lot of times, but at the same time, like, there's no other option than for us to keep fighting for it. Like, as long as we're living and as long as we have this earth, there's I don't know. Are we gonna look into it 30 years later and be like, oh, sorry, didn't do anything, huh? You know, we're about to die, too bad. So yeah, just making the best out of what we can every day. Even if the future looks bleak. Yeah.
Stefanos, there was a lot of pushback on Greta. There was a lot of criticism from certain sectors of society. What are your thoughts on that? And you know, and the pushback and the criticisms of her. There were many on many fronts, that she didn't have the right to lecture adults. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's about the right lecturing adults or the right of saying things. I mean, we live in open societies. We should fight, and we fight for freedom of expression. And for me, freedom of expression should be freedom of expression from anyone. The question is how we react to what Greta and what the young people say. And when we talk about reaction, it's not to say that we hear you or we don't hear you, or we like you or we don't like you, but to understand that such a crisis that has created young people, children, to talk in this way, it's a very serious thing. You know, and I don't want to use the word challenge because in the UN we're a little bit prohibited to say problem, and every time there's a problem we say we have a challenge. It's not a challenge. I mean, challenge is when people decided to go to the moon. That was a challenge, yeah? And I have to deal with. This is a problem. So, and I think that what is good, what's happening is that now everybody talks about problem, it talks about crisis, and it sees how it's affecting the fundamental of the society, which is the young people. Now, of course, as everybody has the right for freedom of expression, criticism is the right of everybody too, yeah? But for me, important is, don't stay at the criticism, don't stay that I like or I don't like, but do say why you don't like and what's your alternative, and when you like, go one step beyond and stop just criticizing and saying that there's nothing is happening, but propose some solutions.
Lily?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the criticism? Have you felt any criticism of your activism?
Sometimes, yeah. Whenever we post on Facebook or things like that, there's always going to be those comments that says like, oh, I doubt these kids have ever picked up trash in their life, or things like that that are negative. But as I said, I feed on negative things. So as long as it's constructive or it can help others, we should always be able to help others and criticize a little.
With criticism on youth climate action, doing this by starting in March this year until now, I've definitely learned a lot, having organized all these strikes from scratch, from, not knowing anything about politics or climate change or technology up until now. I think the only reason I was able to start that was, so I just graduated university. This is my very big transition year. Back to the speech, I don't want to be doing this. Like, I look at Instagram and I'm like, I want to be having fun. I look at my friends in Europe and they're at music festivals and I want to be doing that. I don't want to be shouting on the street about climate action, but I do this because I have to, like, it's my moral obligation. But looking back to when I first started, I definitely did not know anything about how big this crisis is and just how complex the problem is. And I think that's why this climate strike movement is youth-led, because honestly, young people don't know as much as adults. Like, we're too young to understand how complex political and economical and technological systems are, to understand how many problems there are and why it takes so long to solve this problem. But that's, I guess, why a lot of adults tend to lean away from solving the problem, because they're like, well, too many problems, we'll let this go and we'll focus on something else. We'll focus on solutions, but we won't focus on fixing this problem. And because a lot of young people don't realize that, they push for it, they demand that. And so I think the middle ground between that is how do we take on a complex problem and be like, hey, I get that the solution is extremely difficult and there are a lot of obstacles to it, but there's no reason not to take the first step and improve along the way. So yeah, I think that's that gap between youth and adults in this climate crisis solution.
Great, thank you. One more question, and then I think we'll open it up to questions from the floor. Stefanos, is progress being made on this issue?
Extremely and very slow. So, if I have to be frank, there is some progress made. And I think the fact that we have the UN and we have the negotiation process has made some things happen, but extremely low. We should have been decades more advanced, I think. The progress could be accelerated very easy. That's for me the most important thing. It's not exactly like science fiction. What is the problem is that there's a very big risk. And imagine that the following thing. Imagine you're in a beach and you have a place that you want to jump into the water. It's quite high, and you don't also know what's happening below the surface of the water. You don't know if it's a rock, you don't know how deep the water it is, you don't know if it's a shark, and you do know that you have to step into the water because it's fire coming behind you, but you are not really sure how you can make the first step, is what you described, yeah? How I can do this first step, and who is gonna do the first step. So that's why progress is very slow. And one more point on why progress is very slow. I asked Lynn how big is the family. She told me 4 people. And I said, when you want to take a decision as a family sometimes, from very easy things like where we go on a Saturday evening, to bigger things, should we relocate, should we leave Bangkok and go to live on the countryside? It might take days, weeks. And imagine you're a family that you love each other, you speak the same language, and you have a common objective. Now, put 194 countries in a room that they don't speak the same language, they don't particularly love each other. I mean, they like to be with each other, but there's no any love there, for sure. And make them agree on how they're gonna solve the biggest problem that humanity has ever faced. So the progress is very slow. There's some glimpses. I do believe, and I'm not saying this that because I'm from the UN, that it's the multilateralism, it's when countries coming all together that they will make the problem be solved. We need to accelerate, and we need to accelerate very fast. I mean, linear progress is not enough. We need to go skyrocketing in the next decade.
I feel like there is some progress happening, and but that progress is only spreading awareness. It's just like telling people what's happening, but they're not really solving it. I feel like everyone in this room knows what climate change is, but I don't really see any progress made by the government, and I only see progress made by Lynn and me. But it is true, we do need to work fast, and we do need to work now instead of waiting. And I think what we're doing now is literally like, let me give you an example. It's like our house is overflowing with water, and all we're doing is that we're dumping the water out on the street instead of swimming to the tap that's causing the problem and turning it off. You know, that's what we're doing right now. So we need to fix that, and we need to change. So yeah.
Hello. Okay, found it. I've kind of stopped reading the news because there's just a lot of bad news. The media overplays bad news as well. And honestly, like, we get it. Climate change is a big existential crisis. I don't really need any more of that. I don't really care too much anymore how many more species are dying, because I'd rather read about how we can save those species from dying, and really, really focus on the solutions. You know, at this point, I feel like it should already be a consensus that climate change is a problem, and I don't really see why there's still more push of that information and how serious this problem is. If anything, that kind of study and resources to conduct those studies should be invested on actually finding solutions and implementing them. So yeah, I like to read good news, and I think there is a lot of good news out there. It goes both ways. The deeper you get into bad news, the more you read, the more you find it. But the more good news and the more people more people you meet who are doing something, you really realize, like, hey, wow, maybe, you know, because especially when we're living in a city, you know, in this building right now, does it really feel like climate change is happening? Like, we're pretty comfortable right now. So it can kind of go both ways. Like, you can believe that we're hopeless, or you can believe, like, you know, we've got this. So yeah, no point focusing on the problem. Solutions, and do them too. Don't just know about them. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, all of you, for such great comments, and thank you for mentioning the wildlife species, something near and dear to my heart. We'll open it up to the floor now, and if you could just go to the microphone and say who you are, your name, and who you're with.
Hey, good evening all. Is that coming through okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Kun Lin, thank you so much. I'm Kainan. I'm the country director for Save the Children here in Thailand. And I just wanted to say thank you. You are both really, really inspirational. And I think I would like you to take away from this that, you know, your courage is contagious. Yeah, your courage is contagious. Like, even though it may be a small beginning, you know, Greta Thunberg, she was a beginning of one as well. And I think that's such a powerful message that individual children around the world, groups of children around the world, have really changed the global conversation, changed the global speed and desire for change on this. And we may be a bit older and a bit slower, but eventually the adults, we are coming with you. And I think even though you may not see it, you know, in meetings with going to government offices, I can genuinely assure you, maybe in places that you can't see and in meetings that you're not in, that what you're doing is pushing us old folks to move faster and move further and be more energized inside our own organizations, be that NGOs, companies, government, all over. And like, all I would ask you is don't stop. You know, you are doing incredible work, and it's I think it's making an incredible difference, whether that's here in Thailand, and I think, you know, every country needs a Greta, all around the world, and you guys are like adopting that example so powerfully, and so please don't stop. I'm supposed to ask a question, so perhaps my question would be, you know, what would you like? I know it's all about us coming together to solve this problem, but like, if you were to talk to the adults in this room, if you had the floor of talking to every adult in Thailand, what would be your one thing that you would ask of them to do tomorrow, next week, next month? Thank you.
That change is possible, and we should not fear change, because we've been changing for all these years. We can change now, whether that could be bring your own bag to supermarkets, or bringing your own straw to different restaurants, or small things like that could really change and make a difference. So I just want everyone in this room to be mindful. Yeah.
I wish it wasn't so much of a, like, with this climate movement, I wish it wasn't so much of a blame game, as well as like governments and corporations, or, you know, youth blaming adults. I feel like we're all in this together, and you know, like, everyone is as much part of the problem as the solution. If I could talk to the whole Thailand, I guess I'd say the same thing as Lily, as just, you know, really, at the end of the day, everyone can make a difference, no matter how big or small it is. And I think something that's left out of the conversation is capitalism. Thailand, especially Bangkok, is very material based, and that's what drives production. That's what drives corporates and natural exploitation. So I guess it's a lot of, you know, instilling that new mentality to kids of, like, what really is happiness. Is it getting into politics and earning a lot of money and running a big conglomerate that exploits unethical labor and resources, or having a new fast car? Or is it just really doing great things for the community and being a great person and having people love you? So yeah, it really, a lot of it boils down to that, as much as it boils down to, living a sustainable lifestyle.
I will not talk to the adults as I am a kid, because I'm not. But one thing is, first of all, start joining the kids in the demonstrations. And do another kind of demonstration. You're adults, you are voters. Choose with your vote. Not only your political vote, but the vote that you do every day by buying specific products, by awarding or not awarding specific behaviors. And I have a second thing, which is to everybody, not only to adults, but also to the kids that they are in the streets. The next time you go and protest, in addition to your frustration, put some main messages that you want the ones that they take decisions to happen. And these main messages, they were told last week in New York. Stop using coal, and the very easy thing to do is by next year stop using coal plants. Stop wasting energy. Stop wasting food. As you say, of course, stop using single-use plastics. And last but not the least, make the ones that they are really responsible to pay for. So start taxing pollution, start taxing the ones that they create the problem, and not the ones that they are just part of the process. We need to really not start victimizing people. We should not start victimizing, some groups. We just need to say, it's not about you being a victim. It's about you pay for the pollution you generate. And then you will see that it might be much more easier to solve some problems. We know in Thailand, you talked about the PM 2.5, yes? So we know 60% of the pollution is because of open air fires. And we know why they're happening. So it might be extremely much easier to solve the problem than continue talking and complaining about it. Thank you.
Can I add something? Yeah, first, we do actually mention a lot of fossil fuels in this and in our strikes and our demands. But I wanted to add a little more. I believe everyone who came today came because they care about climate change, and everyone in this room probably knows about it. But if you go home today and talk about it to other people, I don't want you to be preaching to the choir anymore. I want you to speak the same language. Just find a common ground with people who don't care. I think that's fundamental to journalists as well, as we're here in FCCT. That's like, how do you make people care? You don't just talk about your interests. You find what they care about and the people they care about, and try to find that common ground. And stop talking about polar bears and melting ice. Like, talk about, hey, look, it's your health, your family, your future, your money, your time. And yeah, that's what's gonna really make them care. Maybe it will come later when they care about nature, but in the meantime, as we're trying to solve this deadline-based crisis, yeah, just anything that works, anything that's gonna get them to live sustainably and do business sustainably.
Great, thank you.
My name is Dr. Jessica Wepanyongrat. I'm assistant professor of economics at Chulalongkorn University, and it was actually wonderful that both of you are involved. You're both from both schools I'm involved with, Chulalongkorn and then also St. Andrews. And my son actually, who was at St. Andrews, actually participated in the climate strike, and he got really excited about it. So I want to thank you guys for getting other kids your age excited about it, and they are bringing these messages home, which is great. And so we are having these conversations as a family about what do we do, how do we change our lifestyle, and so on. So that's fabulous. So you are starting that conversation, and also starting people to change their habits and really thinking about our habits. But I'm also in this unique position where I have children in both the international school, but then also in the Thai system as well. And I see that the messages are, there is the message about sort of climate change, and there are lessons on, recycling and so on, but it's different. I don't feel like the students, at least in the Thai school that I'm familiar with, are as involved. And I know that there was some criticism of the climate strike here in Thailand, that it was mostly, Farang who were involved with the strike, and where were the Thai children? And so I'm trying to think about, what are ways that we can broaden this out of, as you talk about the sort of the core of Bangkok, and how do we reach out to students in the Thai schools, as well as reaching out beyond Bangkok with these issues? Do you have any ideas on that?
As everyone knows, education does start with change. I have a project which I'm working with Thai Ministry of Education to enforce a lesson, a lesson about the environment onto Thai schools, so they know more about the future and know about what's happening. And I think to get more Thai schools involved is to educate Thai children more, and for the media to express that it's everybody's problem and it's everybody's choice to become part of the solution, and just to get more involved, basically,
So seeing the kind of trying to use some communication strategy for Climate Strike Thailand building up since March, I've definitely learned. So there's this cultural context that lies beneath your question, where Thai culture, kids are really supposed to not speak up and be polite and not have any kind of opinion. I think the fact that Lily and I have been able to do this draws a lot from attending an international school and being surrounded by a lot of Western culture too. But besides that, and what I mentioned earlier about connecting your interests with your audience's interests, I think it's also there is the fact that there's a really big disconnect between for Thais, because of the lack of environmental education. There's a disconnect between human beings and nature. I think most Thais would think that, this is just an assumption, but I think most Thais think that humans, we're people. We don't realize the value of where our food comes from. Food is something you buy from the supermarket, and water is something that comes in a bottle. And air is just there. And when you go on a holiday trip to the beach or mountains, it's just a nice photo opportunity, or a nice getaway that's pretty, but there's no real understanding of just how fascinating nature really is, and how much it provides for us, as well as how much we impact it, and how this whole earth and the whole ecosystem is interconnected. So without that basic understanding, I think it's hard to make people truly care for nature without it having to be about themselves.
Thank you. Next question. Yes.
Thank you. Is that working? Yes. My name's Ray Schonfeld. I'm a non-journalist member of FCCT. I think our two students are going to get an endless stream of compliments tonight, so let me just add mine. It's enormously refreshing to hear young people asking the question, what can we do about the climate change problems of the world. And you are two shining examples of that. But my question is not about that. It is about what you hear from your friends and your student colleagues about the career choices that are available to you. I hope you agree that however important political activism may be, it's not the only thing that's needed. We were just, one of you was just commenting on the importance of instilling the knowledge in schools and universities about how the environment fits together. There are lots of other things. In the week in which all the Nobel Prizes are being announced, I hope it's appropriate to mention the role of science. And if we take Lily to start with, because I think you are the younger of the two, what are you thinking of doing? What are your friends thinking of doing? Is it all about political activism? That's the key to what you have to do with your career? Or are you looking at studying the science of what's going on here and how deeper knowledge of the science may help? What do you hear from your friends about what they want to do about this in their education? And then perhaps I'll put the same question at the university level. I think, if I'm correct, you are just coming out of university. So, but is it fair to ask Lily to kick that off? What do you want to do as you go through school?
My friends are really supportive of what I do, yeah, and in the future I want to become a psychologist when I grow up, and I feel like it's important for everyone to change, no matter what, if they're in the government or not. I'm also talking to different companies and different ministries for in what they can do to help, and I'm going forward with an open mind to see what I can do to help and change.
Sorry, what was the question? So what I really want to do is journalism, and I'm really trying to find my way into doing that along with activism. It's a bit of a blurry line, but I feel like there's a way to work around it with this Climate Strike Thailand brand I've built up. But in terms of my friends, they're off doing some random things that aren't climate change related. But I work with this landscape architect. If you bought the Time magazine this past issue about climate change, she's on it. So she's this one Thai woman who designs green spaces, like huge parks that are meant to help mitigate floods or any climate change related stuff, or sinking cities. And her fundamental belief is that every profession, no matter what you do, can and should help address climate change. So, for example, if you're a teacher, teach about climate change, or it doesn't have to be your subject, just talk about it. If you're a normal human being who can talk about it, or if you're a chef, cook sustainable food, it's sourced sustainably or locally. If you are a scientist, research climate change, or if you are, let me see, if you are an artist, can use your art to create awareness. There's just so many ways that, not with climate change alone, but with a lot of social issues that literally every profession can contribute to it. Because essentially, I think a profession is like, what is your place in the community? What do you contribute to the society? What do you contribute to people around you with the skills that you are best at? Yeah.
I cannot say what I want to do for the future because I've defined my future more or less, but I would say if if there was a cataclysmic thing and I was losing my job and I had to do something else, I would say be a risky businessman, businesswoman. Take chances, make risky investments that they are about climate change. Risky investments on energy, risky investments on energy efficiency, risky investments on waste management. Some of these businessmen, they will be rewarded. Not all of them, yeah? And we should not say that, you know, just do this kind of business and you will become rich. But as it was the case 150 years ago, that some people started to invest on things and everybody was saying, you are crazy to invest on this. You can't invest on a thing that could fly, but somebody invested. So the same thing could happen today. And I think we need also to look and see how some of the young people will want to become risky investors, risky businessmen, that they will take this leap forward.
If I may add, with the political activism, if anything, I don't think it's a way to solve this climate crisis at all. It is just the beginning of creating awareness and acknowledging the problem. It's not the real way to actually fix it. The real way would be technological advancement or, yeah, all these solutions that we already have. Political activism is more of like telling to people, hey, look, we already have these solutions. We want you to decide on it. Yes.
Great. Do we have another question? Yes?
Okay, hi. Wait, this is working, right? Yeah. Okay, hi, I'm Pan. I'm a student. I'm about to go into university next year. And again, I'd just like to say thank you for all your work and activism. And I was just wondering, you mentioned, of course, that you're working with ministries in terms of their policies and stuff. And of course, you'd already mentioned the ones about, well, the one that you're working with, the education ministry, into educating people about, you know, climate change. But I was wondering if you could elaborate to us of any more or any other policies that you might be, working on as well with them. I know you've made it very clear that you think obviously they're not doing enough. So yeah, just wondering if, wondering what they've been doing so far.
Since I was 8, I have 6 different projects of how to make Thailand a little bit greener. Number 1, banning single-use plastic in Thailand. Number 2 is eco-education, which is basically me trying to enforce a lesson on to Thai government. And when I was thinking of this, it was because we didn't have enough education about climate change and all these issues in school. So I wanted to bring awareness to that and teach kids about what they can do and what they can do in the future and how to help. And this isn't just to see how climate change affects us or what climate change does, but it's like how we can solve those issues, getting kids' brains working to find new solutions. And number 3, I have green guidelines. I'm working with the Ministry of Natural Resources. What? No. I have green guidelines, which I'm working with Wong Nai and Grab and Lineman. It's basically rules and regulations for each restaurant to be more eco-friendly and green. Basically not using any single-use plastics or having some meals that are meatless. And number 4, it's like green brands. It's basically me talking to different companies about what us children want in the future for different companies and what we want and what we expect from them. Number 5, reforestation, because we've cut down so many trees in Thailand. We only have 37% of trees left, so we need to do something about that. And number 6, green energy sources. Because we've taken so much from the earth, why can't we give back and why can't we use something different? So, yeah.
Wow. Where can we find more information about that? Are these available? Is this information available online? Your projects?
Not my
No?
pod. I have a Facebook page. It's called Bye Bye Plastic Bags Thailand. And it just shows everything I've been up to, especially with the climate strikes and who I've been talking to, what meetings I've done, and what speeches I've done. So, yeah.
Okay. And Lynn, you have Climate Strike. Your website is.
Yeah, it's on Facebook. It's called Climate Strike Thailand.
Yeah. And did you want to answer the question? Your thoughts on?
Oh, right now, yeah, it's mainly on that Facebook page. So the main focus of that has been the climate strikes, but seeing how much it's grown now, I think honestly the point of the climate strikes globally are meant to be disruptive, and that is the kind of impact they're supposed to make. That, you know, they close down entire cities with hundreds of thousands of people, and that's why the government will care. But given the circumstances in Thailand, and also because I oversee climate strikes in East Asia, across East Asia, we're having the same problems with just government inaction and corruption too, and very low freedom of speech. So the climate strikes are not the most effective way of, you know, directly demanding the government to do something, because as long as there's money running in fossil fuels, there's no reason for them to care for, you know, some hundreds of little kids shouting, honestly, like, let's admit it. So with that, I'm trying to work a way of like a communications strategy. So the public awareness is, after this strike, has been amazing. International media coverage has been great, which is good, but what's even better is Thai local media, Thai language press. So that's gotten, you know, across to the Thai audience, and that's what we're aiming for, to create that awareness. And influencers are now contacting me, and sustain like a lot of eco businesses. So there's a lot of room for collaboration. And yeah, honestly, there's no concrete plan right now, but I have I'm working with a few influencers about how we can use different kinds of media to create public awareness about climate change, but also just to, you know, create more sustainable lifestyles. The thing with Thai general public, they just like celebrities and trends and anything cool. So yeah, once this momentum gets going, I think it will be a lot easier from now. But one concrete thing I have going is I'm working with this Thai kind of vlogger who does docu-series. He just travels and documents his journey, but with this upcoming season, he wants to make it very climate change related. So working with him on that, and yeah, a few other things which I'm still looking at. But yeah, I just graduated. Looking for a new job. Anyone? And you know, maybe get into journalism as well, not necessarily under Climate Strike Thailand, but, you know, use my own personal career, hopefully in journalism, to kind of create that impact. Which, for example, if I could write articles to either sway public opinion about certain brands, whether locally or internationally, and also either expose unethical brands and promote ethical ones, for, you know, to change opinion of trade partners in the region who can have that kind of international pressure on Thailand, or any kind of consumer pressure on Thai brands, because that's the only time they're gonna care, when that kind of big money is involved. So just looking at ways to do that alongside the climate strikes.
Great. Any further questions? Any children in attendance want to ask a question? Don't be shy. Here we have one more.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I'm working for UNEP in the Biodiversity and Ecosystem Management Division. Just wanted to say that I'm convinced that, maybe not the solution, but the basis of climate action is for me healthy ecosystems and healthy biodiversity. And I wanted to thank you for being here, for sharing with us, your very inspirational and motivating stories. And yeah, I'm very happy that, because, we have the media attention at the moment. It feels like, the youth is on the streets, everyone is talking about climate change, biodiversity. So there is some momentum at the moment and public awareness. But I'm a bit afraid of what's coming next, because I'm afraid that we are not changing fast enough. And I would like to know what you think, what will happen in Thailand if nothing happens. Because I can say I'm from Germany, and I think there are like two options that can happen if nothing changes. And one option is that people just neglect everything, that they give up hope, and that they don't care anymore. So even youth, that could happen to youth that are on the streets at the moment. Or the other would be that it's becoming more violent, and we can see that in Germany already. There's this Extinction Rebellion at the moment. They're blocking the streets in Berlin. And I'm very worried what will happen. So I would like to know what you think of the future of your activism. Thank you.
I'm really worried for the future because I'm afraid we won't be able to live a normal life anymore, because instead of me being home and doing my homework, I'm doing this. And
we're glad you are.
And I feel like we're not changing fast enough. So that is something we need to do. And I hope that more progress is happening in the future, and it'll come more quickly than it's what's happening now. And in the end, we can either choose to change or choose to swim, and that is really the reality of it. If we don't do something, we will die.
I think if the Thai government or corporations don't do anything about it, I think eventually they will come to realize that the consequences are upon them. It might take a bit of time, and could be too late. But yeah, they will come to learn that. In the meantime, I used to worry about that a lot, but now it's just do what I do. Yeah, there's no. It's good to worry about the future if that helps you plan ahead, but I think at this point, a lot of solutions are there. It's just convincing people to take them. So, just taking it day by day, slowly, like the government. Sabai, mai ben rai.
I think the question is, what will bring change? If we study a little bit history, there are three big things that they have brought change. One is technology. And I mean, hopefully the climate change issue will be solved by technology. The problem is the time span. Do we have enough time? I don't think we have enough time until the technology will be ready. The second is big disasters. So what changed the world was big disasters. Very small story here is, do you know what's the country in the world? What's the first country in the world that banned the single-use plastic bag? Do you have any idea? Huh?
Kenya?
No, it was the first in Africa, Kenya. Who was the first in the world? Bangladesh. Who said this? Yes. Do you know why Bangladesh banned the single-use plastic bag? Because they had a big flood, and people managed to survive from the waters, but they get drowned by the plastic that it was inside the rivers. And the third thing that brings change is political unrest. So I think we need to avoid the political unrest. We need to avoid the disasters. We are not so much controlling the disasters. They will happen sometimes independently of us. And in between the time that technology will be enough to save the problem, we need some very urgent political solutions. We need specific regulations. I'm not so sure, for example, if only supporting green brands are enough, because I'm not sure who is putting the standards of what is green and what is greenwashing. But there are a couple of things, and forgive me that I repeat myself: stop using coal, make your energy more efficient, that they can happen with existing technology. So let's make a first step, and if we cannot solve the entirety of the problem, let's move on solving 10 or 50% of this. Current technology could take out 70% of the current emissions. So let's start with this, and then we could have another step.
I think another thing that could bring change in Thailand, and probably will too, is just like in pressure on corporations and conglomerates, just as soon as they begin to lose profit from being exposed with some kind of, you know, bad rep. For example, if I can bring up Thai Union, the only reason they stopped their unsustainable fishing or unethical labor was because the EU stopped trading with them, because consumers became aware of how their food choice was supporting human trafficking. And I think that's possibly very effective, could bring change in Thailand, where money is what determines the course of a business.
Great. Any other questions? If not, I'll just, I want to sincerely thank Stefanos, Lily, and Lynn. You've left me incredibly inspired and hopeful, for the future. I was at the Kyoto Protocol negotiations in Japan in 1997, and it was looking rough back then. But I think we have a lot of hope and a lot of potential for the future. So I hope that you'll come back and talk to us again. And I'd just like to give a round of applause to our speakers.